between the.
Towards the club,
Mm-hmm.
going north, going south?
Yeah. It's in between the car wash and that
Hmm.
liquor store.
Shoot, since I've been down there, built a Wendy's.
They did. And I hadn't been to Wendy's probably in 15 years, and I've been twice since it's been there.
Is it good?
Well, I just go eat the chicken, so it's been fine.
Is, Dr. Kurt gonna be here?
I haven't visited with him. I'm assuming he'll be here.
Hey,
We'll get started.
have they sent out an email? We're not going to have grounds committee today, by the way. Did
Who
they send
said?
a text?
Who said?
No, I'm telling you. We were talking, and I told them let's just cancel it because they're going to close the club down at 4. And I said there's no reason for anyone to stick around just for us to try to have a meeting. So.
I did all that work.
Oh my
those
God.
Minutes?
I thought you really had something legitimate that we need to talk about.
Whatever did that.
Thought I wasn't gonna be here.
This is all.
Never had a doubt.
That was all about the minutes.
I'm gonna give it just a minute or two. Melanie said she's on her way, so. What?
That was all about all of that.
What's about
The
me?
actress
It's
was about
about
those
me.
minutes.
It's gonna be about me.
I didn't think you were that way.
I don't think you need to.
But I'm starting to learn.
I think you've made the right decision by canceling. If it's gonna be all about him.
There he is.
One, the city,
How you doing?
Chris,
Good
one, the
afternoon.
city asked me, do you ever see Chris calls?
I'm gonna wait on Melanie. She said she was on her way.
I don't know if he's back there. That may be later.
Tell her I said hello. But where you see her at?
I talked to him.
I was hunting.
He calls me
I was
usually
digging through it
Yeah.
looking.
Years ago though, right?
How are you today? Good to
Okay.
see you.
right before the pandemic.
Okay.
Yes. She really likes it up there. She goes to this church, so she calls me to tell
Well, I'm
me. I
out
go to
there.
Macedonia.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So she told me that you used to go to
Yes.
Macedonia.
Yeah.
That's how she met you. She's
Okay.
like, I really like him, the family. And
So,
said, make sure you tell him.
Well, tell her I said hello.
did Melanie give you any idea how quick she'd
No,
be?
sir. She just said she's on her way. I don't think you wait. My personal opinion. But you are the chairman of this committee. I'm the chairperson of that committee. So I decided we're not meeting.
Well, nobody's notified me not to show up yet.
So he's gonna be there.
I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Melanie said she'd be here in a few minutes. To start out, Chris, would you mind, giving us the invocation, please?
Your Honor. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for another beautiful day in West Texas. We just thank you so much sometimes for the things we take for granted, such as water. And we know that everything happens as your will, and hopefully we learn a few things from this. But Lord, we just ask today for your wisdom. We ask for your knowledge. We ask for your guidance as we see to the matters of the Odessa Development Corporation, and ask that you guide us, keep our families safe and protected. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? And if so, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Contractors' reports, Tom?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is this on? Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah.
So we're talking to a mask. I think I'm okay. I'm far enough from y'all. I can take it off. Yeah. I'm masking this week in case you're wondering. I went on vacation last week and on a family reunion, and 19 out of 24 of us caught COVID.
Oh my word.
So I've done my quarantine, and now I have to mask until Friday. So I thought I'd share that with you. Let me get my notes here.
Where did y'all go?
Went to Florida. That's an expensive quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I hope not to do that again. There's not much new. You notice we don't have the italicized. Really what we're trying to do right now with these existing projects, Rocket, Kilowatt, Frost is in kind of its closing deal. There's two taxing entities that we're trying to finalize an abatement with. They've already got an agreement signed with the county. Well, actually, it's not signed. They're agreed in principle. They're trying to get that to the finish line. And I'm on them to get their application in because for the last 4 weeks they've been promising it to me. Legion, there's been no movement because they're part of, or they're kin to CTV, which they want CTV to be completed first. For your information, Project CTV will be in front of City Council tonight for consideration. And if it all goes well, that'll be signed and agreed upon and move forward. So we should know sometime later on this evening about Project CTV. We're still trying to finalize. We've got a meeting Thursday with a company named EDOIQ, which is the CRM group that we've been working with. So we don't have the new reports for you yet as far as how we want to start gathering them. It doesn't do everything we had hoped it would do as far as the reporting on the CRM. So because they're somewhat new, they're actually taking our input. We're hoping that the issues we have with it right now, they'll take Thursday and instill those so that we can have that in our reporting for y'all and anyone else who wants to know about it. Part of that is also it's a little light on the business retention and expansion reporting as far as when we get out and make those visits and find out what companies are doing, how we can assist them in their growth and things of that nature. And so right now we're kind of just entering that into a spreadsheet, but we want to be able to provide that as part of our report to you each month so you know how we're doing. And our goal is 3 to 4 of those each week on business retention and expansion. Some of you, I believe, got an email last week from Wes regarding Nacero. They're moving forward with closing some, I think they finalized some funding on that project, and now they're trying to close in on land purchases that they haven't made. So it is moving forward. I know I hear comments around the community, but in talking to him, and obviously he made a big commitment to join that outfit. I think there's a lot of confidence there. It's just they're tying some loose ends up. And one thing they really wanted, and they impressed upon us, they wanted to have the contract signed with the contractor, and they wanted the contractor at the groundbreaking. And so apparently that's lined up and that's moving forward. So we don't have a specific date yet, but I think we're closing in on something, and we'll have something certainly by next meeting.
They settled in on a new GC?
Do what?
They settled in on a new GC?
I believe so, yeah. And I'm trying to remember when I talked to Wes last time, if it was the last time or 2 times ago, but they were doing final negotiations on some pricing and other things, and I don't want to say for certain it's a signed contract, but I feel like it is. But I think that was the last indication I had.
Have they announced publicly who that GC is going to be yet?
I think they may have referenced it in the email, but I can't remember. Do you remember?
I don't think they have.
Maybe they haven't.
He was, last time I talked to him, that the financing wants to know who the contractor is before they sign the contract. Wants to know
Okay.
who the financing place.
So maybe it's still in the
At that
closing
point, but-
negotiations, but it's either way, it's close.
Okay.
So, and trying to really right now, I didn't realize it'd be so hard to track down people who've come to us with applications, wanting support on their projects, actually getting them to fill out the applications and getting them into us. It's like herding cats, but most of the listing, Project Rocket, Ready Kilowatt, Frost, all 3 of those, we should have had applications by now. We've been promised applications, but we're still working on them. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I think I had one question. Oops. Is that Ready Kilowatt or Reedy Kilowatt?
I don't know how it's pronounced. I actually pulled it up. I gave it the name because of the project. If you remember the little kilowatt.
Yeah, I remember
Cartoon
Ready
character.
Kilowatt, but this looks like Reedy to me.
Well, when you pull it up online, it says Reedy, but I always thought it was pronounced Ready.
Okay.
So I don't know. So,
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you.
thank you.
Glad you're back. Craig, CBA?
Tom, is it safe for me to use this microphone? I'm just curious at this point. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. Our marketing activities are maintaining. Our television, outdoor, newspaper is running in support of business retention and expansion. Do have an exciting thing to mention. I'll get to it here in a moment. Our half-page ad for the Texas Guide of Site Selection magazine appeared in May issue and also on their online edition. And we are currently finalizing, hopefully, a full-page ad that's going to be placed in Trade and Industry Development magazine. They are wanting to do a feature on carbon capture and utilization, and they had heard about Odessa and Nacero and 1.5, and so they're very intrigued by that whole story. So I know that Mr. Mansky's working on an article that will run in that magazine. We're working on a full-page ad that will highlight Odessa as being a leader and a pioneer in the carbon capture and utilization segment of the industry. So we're very excited about that. I think we'll be one of the first rumbles out of the box to proclaim once we finalize the ad and also the commitments by those two companies, and we'll be pushing carbon capture in some of those publications. Social media this month was mixed. Facebook was up, Twitter was down. The good news is on our website, we had good traffic on the website with 92% of that traffic being first-time visitors. And so that's very encouraging. So I think we're seeing across the board more interest from companies all over and looking at expansion and wanting to do more good things going into the future after the slowdowns. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Craig.
Uh-huh.
Chris, Black Chamber of Commerce report.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to make this short and sweet. I know everybody wants to go home and take care of their water issues. We have a very positive report. We're seeing a lot of an upkick in our Facebook views. As a matter of fact, we were up 1% in our Facebook views. Our website, we're starting to see a lot more traffic. I don't know if it's just curiosity. I know that a lot of people we've been approached by this is a gentleman here local that he resides in West Odessa. He has a farm supply, a little small mom and pop, and he is in the process of trying to expand his company. So we sat down and talked to him, and we're probably going to pretty much lead him to the SBDC. And I had mentioned to him that he could also seek opportunities with ODC, but it's a process that he'd have to go through. So we have been working with them, company out of Midland, which is a credit repair company. They are looking to the point, and it is not on the report, but they are looking to the point that they're seeking an Odessa office as well. So we're hoping to have them hope to help them relocate here to Odessa. We're in the process of helping sponsor the upcoming concert here on Wednesday, which will bring in a national recording artist, Fred Hammond, here at First Baptist Church, and this is going to be a really big event. This will kick off the June 19th celebration, which is going to be, we'll have people from all parts of the country because just to come in to see Fred Hammond as well. And then we'll top that off on Saturday with a tribute to the Velvets. So we had another successful food drive where we fed over 100 and something families there at our church at St. James, where we helped sponsor that. We still have quite a few families that are in need. We hosted our networking breakfast on the 4th. partnership with Medical Center and some of our local businesses to help a lot of companies come in and get some very vital information for their small businesses. As I said, we'll do the tribute to, we're gonna be sponsors to the tribute to the Velvets as well. And then we're going to be a sponsor on the literacy reading program on the 23rd. So we have a program that we're going to present, if not next month, the following month, that we're going to try to inspire. When you go to other cities, you see that a lot of the cities take pride in their cleanup. So we're going to present a program that, and we're probably going to do this in hand with Keep Odessa Beautiful, to try to get people to kind of take a little bit more pride in, you know, cleaning up their areas, and when you see trash, take care of the trash. So we got some things in the drawing, and then we'll finish that up in July on the 16th with our 13th annual golf tournament for scholarships. So that pretty much sums up what we have coming up and what we've done. Some of the stuff that took place, we just had our workshop with SBDC on the 9th, so that's not on here. So any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Have a great day.
Tyler, SBDC.
Good afternoon. You have the report in front of you, but I want to go over a few things. Counseling hours for the month, we're at 202 with 163 counseling hours. We had 2 workshops in May. Those were how to create a budget, which was co-sponsored by the Black Chamber of Commerce, and how to write a business plan narrative. Had a total of 34 attendees in those, so about 15, 16 each one, which has been about our average of late. For the month of June, we will have 2 more workshops. One we've already had. It's how to legal structure, basically DBA and LLC question and answer type stuff. And then we'll have fraud prevention later this month. Both are repeats of previous workshops that have done pretty well in the past. We had 3 new businesses, one of those in Odessa. The new businesses in terms of their industry, one was a venue, an entertainment type venue. Another one was a beauty supply store, and the third one was an insurance agency. So those are the 3 industries those are in. Total capitalization for the month, $1.475 million, with about $600,000 of that coming in Odessa. We have 31 new FTEs. This is the time of year we typically circle back with all of our clients from the last 6 months to find out where they are in terms of employees. That's one of the things typically clients aren't great about informing us as their payroll increases or decreases. So that's indicative of that. So that's it.
So Tyler,
Yes, sir.
when you say the 31 was a update, is it a kind of an updated number?
Yeah, what
or-
we do is typically once we have clients, they get their business started, hopefully get funded. We get all that information. We get their initial payroll, what they start with in terms of number of employees, but typically they don't necessarily update us in a timely manner as they add employees as the business
Okay.
grows and goes further. So typically we look back about 2 years at our clients and say, okay, twice a year we're going to check with them and see where they are in terms of a lot of things. But for my purposes, the most important one being how they're doing on FTEs.
How difficult would it be for you to say at the end of this fiscal year, or at the end of your fiscal year? I don't know if they coincide.
Not anymore.
Where you could give us some kind of a report. I guess what I'd be looking for is, this is what they started at as far as FTEs, and these were their businesses are. Some of those businesses may not have made it, maybe they did or whatever. But just to give us an idea of,
Sure, I can work on a
maybe
report like that.
if there's an overall growth, that would give us some
Sure.
additional comfort that, what you guys are doing is great. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think anybody's got any concerns, but
Okay, yeah.
might
can
think
work on something
about
like
how
that.
you might do that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Our fiscal year now is calendar year.
okay.
So,
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tyler.
thank you. Have a good day.
James Motran?
We'll be real brief. At this point, we're really updating a lot of things, and it's just kind of boring, updating a bunch of the data that we send out and things of that nature. One thing is a thank you. I know y'all's chair signed on to a letter that there's a generic version of it included in your packet today, kind of going over the economic impact of the Permian. And of course, we send that out, and the version you're seeing there has some very specific highway projects and ask in there. There's a more generic version of that that goes out across the state as well. We share that with like the UT Board of Regents, the A&M Board of Regents, the Texas Tech Board of Regents, on and on, different agencies, so that they have that same information as well. One thing I would say, we did wrap up our social media campaign on the new Southwest Airlines flight. That ended as of the end of April. And what that came to was about 428,000 people were reached and roughly around 1 million views in that very targeted area to promote that flight. Since then, the city of Midland, through the Midland International Airport and their marketing funds that are available through employment and deployments, have agreed to spend about $100,000 over the next 12 months continuing that campaign. So we think that will be very healthy there. One good thing about it, though, during that time, a couple things happened, and it's not just because we were doing this, but Southwest added another flight at a time where you're not seeing any flights added. That essentially caused their market share to go from about 34% of our flights out here to over 50%, which looks amazing when you're looking at it. In addition, you added a new flight with roughly 100 and some odd seats a day, which increased our employments and deployments enormously. And so it makes our air market look really hot, and it's caused a lot of attention to come to this. So we're taking a lot of that's come out of this and now sharing that with the rest of the airline industry. And I think that's what you'll see us pick up over the next probably 6 months, and pushing some of that data very hard to some of those smaller regional carriers that could come in, because we still have a real shortage of flights out today, particularly Houston and Dallas, and we still have a real cost issue for those who are flying out of the airport. So, like I said, at a quick glance, that's our report, unless you have anything.
Kind of off topic, but I've kind of wondered, and I thought you might can answer this. Have you seen any interest in some of these semi-private airlines, like a JSW or something like that, starting to offer flights out of Midland International? You obviously what they'll do, like out of Austin, San Antonio, Houston.
There are a couple of them that have come into this market and operate on some limited basis. Historically, we've not seen them be tremendously successful, and part of the reason is normally their flight pattern will have several larger markets, which is going to be a big driver for them. Their stopover out here is just to fill up a couple of seats, kind of for grins and giggles, to fill it out. But a lot of them, like one of them that was pushing an Austin, a direct Austin service, they only flew to Austin. I think they went down 3 days a week and only came back on 2 of those days, the way it worked. And most of your air market is really looking for each and every day stability. And that was the problem there. But there are some that are operating here, and particularly the ones that have been effective are generally going to Oklahoma. Those are the destinations. And I will say this, when we promoted the Southwest flight between here and Austin, stupid as this sounds, we were told at one point to include the Oklahoma City market in that. And I thought, well, that sounds stupid. But oddly enough, once we did, the viewership on that campaign went up enormously. So there's a connection, and the way those folks are doing it today is through Austin. And that goes back to some of the deals with the Wright Amendment previously on Dallas flights for Oklahoma. So, but there's a market there.
Interesting. Thank you.
James, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Where would the direct connection on McCamey, I-385 and I-10, would it go up where 305 is, or does it still go to Fort Stockton, or
Well,
what would be
today there's the US 67 corridor that would go on down to closer to Fort Stockton, just right outside of there. There is 305, and then there's another one that there's 3 routes down there.
Right.
And so part of what we have asked for is a study for TxDOT to determine whether
you know, the original line trial route that we had worked on was the 67. But what we're seeing on a lot of the traffic is you're seeing a lot of cutback over towards Iran, the 190 heading that way. So for them to look at that and kind of figure out what's the best way to make
So
that
it's just a
direct
study
connection.
now.
Yeah.
I forgot what the Craddock reliever route is on the next, which route is that one?
As you're coming in on 349 into Midland, there's a route that veers off and comes back over to 1788. And
Okay.
that's actually 349 in the
Right,
portion down there. One of the things that we're working on is trying to complete that out because
Right.
there's about $1 billion of additional funding that's going to be
Yeah.
available to TxDOT, and we literally at this point don't have a place to put money anymore. We don't have enough projects ready to go. That's
Yeah.
how far behind we are on everything. But the other part to that was when we were discussing that route with TxDOT a couple of years back, they started a study that's being done through the MPO that would extend the Craddock reliever route back over to I-20 on the east side of Midland and then bring it back over to the west to connect to Odessa.
Yeah.
And that study is probably about a couple weeks from wrapping up, and then they would start, needless to say, that study's shown that there's certainly a need for another connection back between here. It'll come to a routing study. And I know that's been an area, I know Tom is on the MPO, and that's something they've talked about where exactly would you bring that into Odessa? You know, do you try to bring it into Loop 338 somewhere? Do you go north of the loop? Where exactly do you do that? And so that'll be the next part. And I think they've already funded that, Tom. The routing study will be ready to go as soon as the others finish. So.
Okay. If I lived in Midland, I'd remembered which one it was.
I understand. Good deal.
Anything else for James?
Thank y'all.
Thank you, James. Larry, financials.
It's
Oh,
me.
Cindy.
Larry's out sick today.
You're not as tall as he is.
Okay, you have the April financial statements. We had total assets of 63.5 million, about 170,000 in liabilities. That leaves us a fund balance of 63.3. Of that, 29.9 is reserved to grants and incentives. 9 million is for TxDOT projects, and we still have 4.9 assigned to the workforce housing. That leaves unreserved at 19.5. There really wasn't much activity during the month of April. In the investment arena, we did not purchase any assets during the month. We have had some activity in May, and we've moved quite a bit of the money out of the Frost money market account and put it into the Logic. Their interest rates have risen quite a bit in the last 30 days, so we made a $7 million move that just took place. I think it was last week we actually got it finalized. So for June, ODC sales tax collections was $1,104,957. This is an increase of $131,000 or 15% over last year's June. On a fiscal year to date, we've collected $8,861,000. Our budget is set at $9.5 million, so I don't think we have any issues in meeting budget at this time.
Cindy, off the top of your head, how many months in a row have we had a sales tax increase?
So I can tell.
Seems like it's 6 or 7 months, maybe?
Actually, every month since October, we've been ahead of prior year.
Yeah, great,
Yes.
great.
So, and so we're probably looking at bumping up that sales tax budget for this upcoming year. We'll probably, I think I'm gonna get those numbers out to you, preliminary numbers for our budget in July. And so we'll look at what we wanna project that out at, okay? But yeah, sales tax is looking good. I also wanted to mention, I think several of y'all have commented about the cash flow statement that I emailed to y'all along with the proposal packet. So, would y'all like that monthly, quarterly? I mean, on a higher level, it's actually on page 3 of your financial statements. It gives you the current year, amount to pay out, and then it gives you the rest of the amount. Whereas this sheet is gonna give you a by year amount. So I didn't know if y'all wanted this quarterly, monthly.
Cindy, I comment on the report, and I really like the report, and so I would probably say quarterly.
Quarterly?
Would be fine.
Is that
as far as I'm
sufficient?
concerned.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, beneficial report.
And I think that's all that I have on the financials, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Cindy? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the financial report as presented. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, the next item is consider proposed revisions to the draft economic development agreement with Downing Wellhead Equipment. Are you gonna handle that, Natasha, or? I know it says ODC board, but I don't think we can all talk at once.
Well, with that item, it's kind of simple. Downing requested some revisions to the original agreement that we sent out to them, and I thought it was important to bring those, I thought they were substantive changes, so I thought it was important to bring those back to the ODC board to see if you agree with those changes.
And some of those, at least one of those changes that they requested, you did not think was, I think it was the one, it's at, in Article 5, number 1, I think, or maybe it's 3.2.1, that you said that can't happen. I guess the red line version of that was what they proposed, but you lined that out saying we can't do that the city can't, ODC can't pay out, the city can't pay out funds out of sales tax
Right.
at the ODC, okay. But everything else, you, from a legal perspective, you didn't have any issues with. I didn't have any. Anybody else have any concerns?
Yeah, I do. So, in section 2.2, I think it really frees this up. That all they've got to, because we have a requirement for FTEs, we have a requirement for payroll, and this is just saying that all they have to do is hit, any one of these moving targets. And then the other thing is it's still unclear to me, I think that under a full-time equivalent jobs, you retained 57, jobs added year 1, jobs added year 2. That's a little, I like that, that's more clear, because I think that really takes some of the ambiguity out of it as far as how many, they have to add to it each year to be in compliance with the FTEs. And the FTEs is defined as, 1,850 hours a year. But I still think, from the original contract, it's very important that we have not only the FTEs, but we also have payroll. I'd hate to see us have 110 jobs and all of them at $7.25 an hour.
So I'm not sure I'm even following it. So is this saying that in the event they don't hit the number of jobs, but that payroll exceeds it, then they would qualify? Because if that is the case, I may not have a problem with it, and that may keep your concerns about the $7.30 jobs.
They're saying any one. If they hit one factor, even if they miss others. And what we've done previously is retained the ability to look at what they do and make a decision about their grant, whether it's prorated or how we want to address it. Usually we retain discretion there. This looks like they're trying to tie us to, if they hit even 1 mile marker, then they're entitled to their grant funds without having met the others.
That's
57
what
jobs at $7.30 then.
So if they don't have all the jobs but have all the payroll, or if they have all the jobs but do not have all the payroll, they want to be treated as fully in compliance.
Okay.
Whereas in the past, we've retained the right to look at what they do and either adjust or make some discretionary decisions about the grant based on their performance.
Yeah, I'm with Melanie. You know, that's kind of what I was looking for, was to give us a little more discretion as the board to say, okay, you know, hey, they missed it by 1 FTE, but they did do the payroll. So, you know, in the prior deal of the contract, it said if they miss an any, it will be paid pro rata. So we were held to that. So we were looking for a little more discretion, but what they're looking for is
You're saying this
open
opens it up,
discretion. Yeah,
opens
this
it up
is,
to,
I think
Shall
this is
be
too
deemed
much.
to be in compliance.
Right.
I agree with the thought. Yeah. I'm sorry, you said they're on remote so we can ask them?
It also says, in no event shall this agreement be interpreted as requiring company to meet or exceed all factors simultaneously.
Yeah, I didn't like that line at all.
So, Dave, they said they're online.
Mhm.
Can we get them to kind of explain what their
Sure.
thoughts in that?
Did the representative hear, any of the representatives hear that question? Or are they on?
Or do we have them on mute?
Are they muted? It says unmute.
It doesn't look like they're on.
You know, is there a way we could reword this, Melanie, that you would think that would give us a little more discretion?
Yeah, I
But
mean,
at the same time, you know, I still think it's important that, you know, because vice versa, and this is a terrible example, I'd hate to see them, you know, meet the $3.9 million payroll and do that with 10 jobs either. You know, that
I mean,
kinda stuff.
I think that we take our more typical language in here that says, you know, we have in here that if the company does not fulfill one of the requirements, then we have the right to adjust or prorate based on factors that we're wanting to list in the contract. I say we propose similar language there and say, you know, no, we're not gonna tie our hands,
Yeah, solely at the board's
but
discretion.
we're also going to let you know that historically we take performance into consideration, and we've never just said you get nothing when somebody has substantially performed on the agreement.
I'd rather see wording like that or something to the tune of, like it was with a pro rata, but yeah, I didn't really like this wording.
Well, it's meant to tie us up in a way that we've not previously
Yeah.
done,
Well,
agreed to do.
you know, part of our discussion with the last one that we had, we wanted flexibility, and I heard you say that. So I'm certainly for the flexibility, and I think that, again, as we're beating this up, but as an example, 56 jobs, exceed payroll, got it.
Mhm.
But I don't want to be tied into, they can play the game however they want to play the
Right,
game,
yeah.
if you will.
And then we
And that may
still
not
have
be
to
what
pay
their
them
intent
the
is. I wish they was on, because I don't want to say that harshly, but that's what's it.
I'm certain it's their lawyer's intent that they should have as much flexibility as possible. I don't know that this is
Sure.
necessarily coming from them.
Yeah.
Well, I think it sounds like to me the language that you've proposed or discussed, Melanie,
Jan and- yeah.
it demonstrates that we're dealing in good faith. So, and that's what our intent is. And I mean, we can let's ensure, Norma, that our minutes reflect that's really what we're trying to accomplish, is that we're going to be dealing in fairly and in good faith with our grantees.
Well, and by that exact token, I think that the language that we are working with in our contracts going forward, if we were to propose it here, you know, it's not our intent that if they show up and they've exceeded payroll, that they've got you know, 55 or 56 FTEs that we're gonna say,
So to add
Too
to add to this conversation, 'cause I think this is part of it as well. If you skip down to 3.1, it seems like it's written to say some of the similar things.
I think my recollection is what this was saying was that they would have an opportunity to catch up if they did. I don't think
I thought that was already in there, though.
yeah, I don't think this conflicts with, in a way that the previous provision
Okay.
did, the way I read it,
Exceeds the
Chris.
tested job numbers, annual payroll established for such years, such excess communals.
I think in general, what they're talking about is if they were prorated because they didn't meet the standard in the first year,
Can they make it?
and then the in the next year, they more than overcame their deficiency, that they could receive the difference that they didn't get the first year. That's what they're saying here, and that makes sense to me.
We've talked about incorporating that.
Yeah, and that makes sense
in
to
the
me.
agreement
I don't
as
see that
well.
as
So make sure, not legal talk, so if they miss it one year, theoretically, they did not receive payment. But in the following year.
or a
if
short
they-
payment.
Or short payment.
yeah.
If the following year, if they overspend to some degree, then they would be due what they missed.
But I
the year
thought
that
that
they
was
didn't meet as
already in
well.
there, because we brought that up when they were here, because they missed it by 1 FTE, which we got them a prorated grant. But we said in the following years, if they exceed by that 1 FTE, then they can go back and pick up what
Now,
they missed
this,
that
this,
first year.
this is not the one that we talked about
This
last
is a
week, right?
different
I mean,
one.
last
Is this a
month.
different one?
Yeah, yeah.
But you're right, Crystal, I think we did talk
But
about
yes,
that.
But
we
also-
talked about including that
Yeah.
language.
But
in
also,
all
but,
of
Yeah.
but also the way
Sorry.
we were describing it to that grantee was that we would have the discretion to do that. It wasn't an automatic situation, and that, you know, we certainly would wanna treat the grantee in a fair fashion.
Well, this is saying automatic is what this
Yeah,
is saying.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this does, and I'm okay
This,
with it.
but, okay, so what this does though,
I think we need to have the discretion to it, it doesn't need to be automatic.
it's not so much that I'm not, but what does this do to other contracts that doesn't have this language?
Nothing. I mean, this is,
Yeah, that's-
Each contract is case
we
by case?
we
Mhm.
negotiate each contract individually. It certainly does set a precedent. But I think that what we can do, I think what I would want us to do for sure in 3.1 is include language that in no case would amounts paid exceed the total grant as set out in the contract, number one. And we can talk about whether or not in this one we wanna have discretion or we want it to be automatic, that's a board decision.
Hey,
I would rather give the board discretion, so we can't just think about us, we gotta think about future boards down the road and unforeseen circumstances.
Well,
And as long as the
and-
board has the discretion to say yes or no, then this board's hands are not tied.
And it's hard to guess at what any future circumstances might be where we would want to preserve that discretion rather than sacrifice it now.
So Tracy, they're trying to get online? Is that what they're trying to do? Okay.
And the other thing that I really didn't like about 3.1 is it was a little ambiguous on the, cause it says, exceeds the designated job numbers, annual payroll established. Is that meaning exceeds in any one of them? Does that mean exceeds in all of them? Then they can come back and get that back. To me, it would be, it should be in the item that they missed, okay, so we missed an FTEs this year, but we went way over in payroll next year. If that's at the board's discretion, okay, so be it, but I don't think we need to have anything automatic that says, okay, you were 10 FTEs short this year, but hey, you did go over by 100,000 in payroll this next year, so we'll go back and give you the part of the grant you missed last year on FTEs. I think it needs to be a little more clear.
They're online
I
now,
mean,
so.
to me, it's clearly worded to me. I mean, I feel like it's clear. They're saying if they overperform in year one, they get to bank the excess to apply to any future shortfall. If they underperform in, like, say, year 2 or 3, without any banked excess from prior years, but then in years 4 or 5, they overperform, they're entitled to a catch-up payment. I think it's pretty clear. It's just a question of, in my opinion, whether we want to preserve our discretion or how we want to approach it.
Well, in addition to that, my question is, how do you calculate, well, I mean, how do you calculate that? What is the matrix for catch-up and repayment,
Well,
and what's the number
That's
for we
Presumably,
over?
it'll have to do with that proration. So whatever amount we pay, that prorated amount that we pay, the unpaid amount has a number of jobs or a payroll number associated with it, and you would just use it proportionately.
Yeah, I was reading
Who's
it
gonna-
like
who's
that,
calculating
and
that?
then
Were y'all
you clarified,
calculating
this whole paragraph is if they go over in any one grant period. I was looking at it the other way, is if they're under in the grant period, wanna make it up later. This is if
They
they
do
go
say
over
that
up
too.
front,
They say both.
then they can carry it forward. It'll be that, if they're over by, $200,000 in payroll, but next grant period they're 200,000 short, they can carry that over and get the next grant.
So
Romanet 1 is a carry forward.
can we get the
Romanet
next?
two
yeah,
is-
let's,
If they're
let's,
under-
What is they're trying to do?
let's get input from the grantee. Do you know, are you guys on the line with us? Or can you hear us? I guess you can't hear us.
Can y'all hear us?
Adam,
Wait a
can you
minute,
hear
are
us?
We must be muted.
Could we, we're muted, we need to unmute us.
Okay, there you go, David.
Okay.
Can you
Now
hear us
maybe you
now?
can hear us.
Who is on the line for Downing? Apparently they still, it says Adam right there. Can you hear us, Adam?
Tracy, do you mind calling and see if they can hear us? Cause
Yeah, see if they can hear us.
because I personally, I can't.
Not a good sign. Hey, Tracy. Yeah. We can't hear anything.
We can hear them.
them.
Yeah, we can hear them.
You can hear us on the
Yes.
speaker?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, it's fine. I think. All right, there's a couple of questions that have come up in these contract provisions proposals. Number one is in Article 2, Section 2.2, at the bottom where it talks, is that where that was? Yeah, it basically calls for, if you meet any one of the full-time equivalent jobs number, the annual payroll number, or the cumulative payroll number, then you qualify for the funds. I think our concerns are, and I know I'm thinking this is probably not your intent, but our concerns are that if let's just say the payroll was way off, but you had the same number that you did 110 jobs. Well, that's not our intent. And I don't think that's what your intent is. We are certainly inclined to be fair and to deal in good faith and to understand that, maybe you would be off a little bit in the payroll dollars and maybe you exceed the number of FTEs or vice versa. And in the past, I think we've demonstrated that we're willing to take those things into consideration when we calculate the annual grant funds that we're going to disperse. But the way that it's written, there can be a big swing, large discrepancy that doesn't make sense to match up with the grant dollars. So we think that needs to be rewritten in some way where there's we are taking into consideration all the factors, and that we will consider non-proration, if you will, or proration of the amount in order to be fair and to meet the intent of what our agreement is. So That's one item, and I'll let you maybe comment on both of these at the same time. In section Article 3.1, the agreement really ensures that if you are you have a shortfall at any point, that if you have made that up either before or after, that you are going to be able to that all the grant funds will be due. And again, we would like that to be at our discretion, and you know that we're going to take into consideration all factors. We're going to deal with you in good faith. Our intent is to be fair with this, but the way that it's written, I think it locks us down a little bit further than we'd like to be. So my question to you is, if we modified either one of those terms to build in some discretion by the board, and knowing what our intent is, and trying to put some language in there that demonstrates that intent, would you be comfortable with that? We.
Put down the speaker.
Now we got them off.
We ended in 2019. Our intent was interpreted accurately by you all that we just needed a little flexibility, that if we hit another down cycle and we have a really, really bad year, that we don't lose the whole benefit of the bargain. So whether that's in the form of a discretion or on 3.1 in particular, capping how many years backwards or forwards we can reach for the calculation, I don't think any of that undermines what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Well, I mean, that makes. I think we're on the same page. We just need to take a stab at modifying this language, and we'll work promptly to do that in both of these sections. I think I'm hearing you say that we all have the same intent here. It's just a matter of capturing it in the document.
Yep, just a little flexibility that a shortfall in 1 year doesn't trip you up for the next 4.
Okay. Okay.
We're all after.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I'm gonna go ahead and leave you on here on.
who's gonna work on the wording and that?
City.
Okay. Because it's all about, it's really about, I think the biggest concern is all about economic environments, right? I think that's what, I don't know if we can put some language in there that addresses that, because that's really where the shortfall is gonna come. Or if, anyway, work on that.
Yeah.
I got another question, this termination. I'm not sure I really understand this termination.
Yeah, that's gonna be my question.
What does that tell me?
2.6.
My understanding of that language is that if we terminate this contract for our own reasons and they have materially complied with the agreement, that they are still entitled to receiving the portion of the grant they have earned at the time of termination.
Can you think of any reasons why we would ever terminate? I mean, as long as they're creating jobs and creating payroll, full-time employees, I can't imagine that ever happened, but okay.
Or the other way, is there any circumstances where we would terminate an agreement and not pay what was due?
Well, in one of the provisions,
I can't imagine
in
that.
one of the provisions later in the agreement, we talk about if a grantee is convicted of being in non-compliance with laws that require them to hire only documented. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That at that point we have the right to claw back payments. If we had to terminate it for that reason, we have that. There are certain reasons that we may have to terminate an agreement. I think that if they have done something illegal, that would be considered a breach on their part or a default on their part. So that this provision wouldn't apply in the event they've defaulted in that manner. If they've done something to violate our ability to move forward with the agreement.
Okay. Well,
if we just terminate it out of the blue.
But okay.
Which we have the right to do. They're saying we would still owe any earned
If they have not
payments
defaulted.
if they have not defaulted in some fashion.
I'm still not overly comfortable with that, just for some of the reasons you're talking about, because, any grantee we give still has to understand, anything they're putting into the city, they still have capital investments that belong to them. They still are getting the benefits of employee labor from Odessa as well. The only thing, we're giving up economic development funds, for sure. But I think we need to have an ability to claw that back, for instance, just like what you've said.
Well, we would.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
saying if we terminate the agreement without a default on their part.
Okay, okay.
Okay?
Okay,
If
okay.
there's a default on their part, we do still have,
We have our provisions.
we have provisions in
So,
here.
so we would be terminating the agreement beyond anything that they can
Basically
control.
be without cause.
Makes- it makes no-
The
Okay.
equivalent of a termination without cause.
Sorry,
That's
we
the
don't like
better
when you parties are here
Yeah,
today, we're
yeah,
terminating
yeah,
our
yeah.
agreement.
Without
And
cause.
again, I think
Well, we
this,
don't use the word cause in this agreement, so
I
I
think-
wouldn't use it.
I think the city of Odessa and the Odessa Development Corporation would always want to honor any agreements that we have in place. And that would, and so if we terminated it without them in default, then
The
we owe
only possible issue would be in the highly unlikely event that for whatever reason ODC were bankrupt and did not have funds to pay and we had to terminate contracts.
So I'm a little confused, but my question specifically to them is why did they put this in? What are they trying to protect themselves from in this?
Did you hear that question?
Yeah. So again, you guys have interpreted exactly what we were trying to accomplish. This is a without cause termination. The whole reason that sparked this insertion to begin with is that our prior experiences with this foreman, the mechanics that it had, there was no unilateral convenience termination. So we could theoretically commit to a developer and choose this location and this developer and this whole project based on this incentive, have done nothing wrong, been in compliance for a year, and then been cut off the second our building opens. And we were trying to protect our benefit of the bargain and our election in Odessa with this mechanic. It seemed like we could trip ourselves up by doing everything right, and then whether it's my bad haircut or what it would be, that the incentive is just taken away. But we're certainly not trying to overreach and get in the way of default termination if we're ever not in compliance. That's not what we're trying to prevent here. But for the truly convenience termination, I think that I'll have to double check, but I think the bankruptcy type scenario of earmarked funds not being available is still addressed in the agreement. I'd have to go back and review that. But if that sort of fringe concern is something that remains, we don't necessarily need to contest that either. We just want to make sure that if we have acted in good faith, complied with all of our obligations to date, we can't be unilaterally handed the short stick and then not receive the remainder of the incentive.
I think they tried to address that in the point one following, where they redlined, and in the event there are no sufficient funds for the purpose of this agreement, then the funding of this agreement shall be offset or charged against any other funds, ODC or the city of Odessa, but we've already found we can't do that. The city's not gonna allow that.
Yeah,
That was something that we looked at in 3.2 when Adam and I were reviewing what we did here. I'll take the blame for that. If there's any issue with that, that can be inserted back in there. Whatever it was that we were looking at or thinking about, we remember this discussion last time that the funds are the funds and there's no other
Yeah.
way that it can dip into any other allocated money, that we can
Yeah.
go ahead and reinsert that. That was an error on my part.
No issue there.
I don't see any problem with the termination, the language that they're requesting. I mean,
I don't
I think it's
either.
fair. I mean, that's really, makes sense.
That explanation,
I don't
agree.
think it does anything bad to us.
Okay. While we've got them on, anything else that we need to address?
Well, I wanna be clear though. This says ODC shall promptly pay to company any then remaining amounts of the total grant. I think that we say any then earned but unpaid
Incentives,
amounts of the grant,
not the total amount.
not the total amount. It would need to be earned amounts,
Well,
right?
Yeah.
I don't think that would accommodate our risk the same way, because we could still be in the scenario where we have committed everything and we're fully in compliance in the first 9 months before the first annual calculation, and then the incentive is gone.
Okay, but
So-
what if the agreement is terminated in year 2, and by this provision, we have to pay you all 5 years worth of the grant, and in year 2, you take the remaining part of the grant and you boogie out of the city? I mean, it's gotta be equitable.
I agree. I haven't really thought what would strike that balance. Boogieing out of the city when we signed a 5-year plus lease and committed to this development would be a task. So it's not something that we could probably very easily do. But
We've seen it.
I don't wanna,
that it's subject to abuse.
I don't wanna get this too complicated, but we could escrow, I mean, if we get to that point, we could escrow funds, and then they could earn those annually
Who
or
will
something.
be
Well-
monitoring the compliance? Who will be, I mean, that's
That's what I'm saying.
And that doesn't
But
pass,
sure,
that doesn't
I
pass the
think-
Muncie test.
Just shaking her head.
Maybe we need to, is there any way, Adam, that y'all can have discussions with city legal about this particular issue, and maybe work on some kind of solution that's equitable for both parties? I don't know that we're gonna get to it sitting here in this meeting.
I agree.
Yep, we're happy to discuss any of the provisions with any other party that wants to talk about them. We'll be available.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm giving Tracy's phone back to her.
Anything else for us while we're here?
Anybody have any questions?
We'll make those changes, the ones discussed today, and then we'll provide them with a copy and
Okay.
get back
And
with them.
I think Larry has one question.
Yes.
Not for them,
Oh.
just the context on something on the statement here.
Sure.
On, where's it?
No, that was all they had.
Okay.
Under economic development on 2.2 jobs,
Okay.
I think that's, as a primary statement, needs to be changed, where it says company agrees to relocate and retain 57. I think at that point it should have Ector County. It should say retain and relocate in Ector County as a primary statement on that, sub-paragraph.
Yeah. Otherwise, it can be
It could,
conceived
yeah,
that
it
they're gonna
could be-
operate and retain those jobs in counties adjacent to Ector County.
since that's in the header, and then it picks up Ector later, but, I think it needs to
So I understand. and-
say retain and relocate in Ector County, 57 full-time
I
jobs.
understand, and it's somewhat in good faith agree with what you're saying. I think that from a business standpoint, that's kind of difficult, because I'm trying to hire the best possible people I can, and I can't guarantee you that they're going to reside in Ector County. But I say that to say this. This is the reason why I have said I think there has to be more emphasis on fixed assets than there are people.
Yeah.
Because fixed assets, I can make sure are staying in Ector County.
Well, my
This
point
does
is just
say- it
the
does say
way it's worded
The
there. It picks up
FTEs
Ector County in
Ector
the next
County,
sentence.
Texas.
I just think it needs to have Ector
Where does it
moved
say
up
that,
into the
Melanie?
primary position.
Okay, if you read on, it's a very long, the second sentence, annual payroll is defined as payroll amounts, blah, 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 and other compensation that would be taken out. Each year following the effective date, company shall increase the full, the
Yeah.
FTEs
It does
in
say
Ector
that.
County, Texas. So, we can clarify here, the jobs are to be performed in Ector County, Texas. They don't
Right,
have to
they're not asking them to
reside.
move the
Right,
resignation,
right,
they're saying that the jobs will be located.
Relocate the job.
But I'm with Larry on that, I
But Larry,
think
you
it
want-
should be
you-
relocate them
Go ahead, I'm so sorry.
to Ector County, 'cause further down, it's talking about adding new jobs, FTEs to Ector County, but up here,
But it's gotta
it
be
doesn't specifically address the relocation.
an operations site
Ector County.
based in Ector County, Texas.
I apologize. So you're saying jobs, not people.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not talking about moving found, I'm just talking about the jobs. That's what we're looking for under our economic development agreement, primary jobs in Ector County.
But basically, USA's gonna relocate to and retain the FTEs operating in it. They're gonna have to become Ector County operating. So we may need to reword the sentence to make it work. Let's look at it. It just basically means that the jobs have to
Yes, I think
operate
you
out
pointed
of
that out.
it.
I think what we should do is probably take the noted issues, and Larry may have another one, but, and just forward those to Natasha. We're gonna be here forever. if we-
Okay.
Pick up
we
the
don't
Because I
have
had
it.
one more.
No, go ahead. I go ahead and mention
On
it.
2.6, termination, I think that needs to be reworded to say ODC elects to if ODC elects to terminate the agreement for any reason, not that ODC termination dies, ODC terminates or something. I think that needs to be clarified on 2.6, that we're talking about the agreement terminating, not ODC.
Yeah. What he's saying is, the way this reads now is if, for whatever reason, ODC goes bankrupt or defunct, if ODC, in the event of ODC's termination, not termination of the agreement, but ODC's termination, and he's saying we should clarify that to say that in the event that ODC terminates the agreement. Is that correct, Larry?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
That's a simple addition.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay. We'll go on to the next item with no action taken, other than a lot of legal action. Casey,
Well, she popped
homemade
right up there, didn't she?
wines. Yeah,
Hi, how are y'all?
great.
How you doing?
Good.
Remember, we don't have any restrooms working. That's the reason she popped
Oh.
up.
That's the problem. We gotta
She's
rush
ready to get
this
on outta
along.
here.
Yeah.
Too much tea.
I had way too much tea at lunch, so I'll be quick. We are here to talk about a infrastructure and facade grant for homemade wines located at 400 North Texas Avenue. They submitted paperwork for the facade and infrastructure. 400 North Texas, if you guys are not familiar, that is on the northeast corner, right there on Texas and 4th. It's the building that has the rounded edge. I believe back in the day, it was a tire shop, some kind of tire mechanic shop.
Yeah, Bailey Griffith.
Yes, so that's where they're going. So we will start with facade. This building is in tier 1. So that is a 80-20 split between the grant and the business owner. Total grant request, they did max out at the $25,000. Total owner investment will be $61,400 for a total business property investment of $86,400. On your Exhibit A, it does kind of go over what is covered by the grant and then what we excluded on the grant. Covered by the grant is the facade renovation, including new windows, a metal awning, exterior doors, and a mural. I did verify that the mural is covered, and it is. It's actually in the paperwork, so that was new information for me. What's not covered is going to be demolition of any kind and sidewalk leveling repair. So sidewalk is not going to be covered under the facade. So that's how we got to those numbers. 25,000 is our max again. So that's what they're seeking for the facade. It does show renderings of what they're trying to do. That building currently has a metal attachment. I don't know what it's called, but it wraps all the way around the building. So they're going to paint that. They're going to repair some of the brick. They're going to update all the windows. And there is currently a section of the brick that is covered by wood. They're going to put stucco over that, and that's where the mural is going to go. It's going to face Texas Avenue. So there are the 2 bids included, and this has both Both of these grants, we met and chatted with the Downtown Grant Review Board, and they approved them to move us here. So, any questions on facade? Perfect. We will move on to infrastructure. So again, we're at 400 North Texas. This grant is total grant request. They did not cap out at the 200. It's going to be 133,910 grant request. Owner investment on this grant is going to be $304,650 for a total business property investment of $438,560. Again, if you look at your infrastructure worksheet, it'll show what is covered and what we excluded. And before we get into that, I will say that I reached out to our city building inspector. I also did some independent research with the city building codes and the international building codes. Luckily, we have a full city staff who is much more intelligent on those things than I am. But just for clarification, on lighting and electrical, so what the code says is that this restaurant would need to be illuminated. And by illuminated, it's kind of vague. So what we went with was that it would cover the electrical to get to the sockets and in the ceiling, but it won't cover any pendants or any kind of chandeliers. So we got that clarified. As far as restrooms or hot water, it does require that there are restrooms, that they are ADA accessible, and that there is hot water in the restrooms. So as far as plumbing, we excluded the kitchen work, but we did include the plumbing that would go to the restrooms to supply that hot water. So if you see any questions, just let me know. But what's covered is going to be the fire suppression system. It will have to be sprinkled. Again, it does cover the bathrooms because they must be ADA compliant, and it currently doesn't have them. Plumbing, electrical, and then in the rendering, you will see that they have 2 exterior doors that they're adding. We're covering one of those. The back is going to need an entry door. They're also going to put up a roll-up door. The roll-up door we decided was going to be industry specific, so we did not include that. But per fire code, they will need an enter and exit door in the back. So I did go ahead and include that in the quote and in the grant. Excluded is going to be the bar, as that's industry specific, spray foam insulation, the ceiling repair, the office, kitchen, walls, tape, texture, paint, all of those. Flooring, again on flooring, I learned that it's only if it's a pier and beam floor, and that would only be the subfloor to make it safe to walk on. This is a slab foundation, so none of the flooring would be covered. And then, of course, demolition. Any questions on that?
Oh, no. Okay.
Yes, sir?
I was on the infrastructure, on the money. Some of the questions that Melanie and I raised were,
yes,
did they get the lease signed and did they get funding?
Yes, so I have those questions. Some of the questions that were brought up during the Downtown Review Board meeting was if they had the ad valorem of personal property taxes that was filed this year. They currently have a homemade wines that's on JBS. This is going to be in addition to, so they did have that ad valorem and filed questions of how this was funded, and this is funded from private savings, and they do have the money available in their bank. This question about if this is a lease or a purchase of this 400 North grant, it is a lease. The owner, who is here if you guys have any additional questions, said that she is leasing with the intent to buy in 5 years, and the Downtown Review Board requested a letter from the oaths for a letter of authorization. And then the other question was if the market had increased for production, for what they're able to produce now will be doubled in their new site. So they're intending to move all of the production that is currently housed in their location on JBS. They're moving all of that to this Texas location. And in essence, they're going to double their production. And so what the owner stated was, yes, they're currently selling out. They're getting into more retailers, and they just got into Pinkies. They're currently in 10 different retailers in Midland, Odessa, Monahans, and Andrews. and they're working to get into several in the Panhandle. So this need for the larger space and for more production room is definitely there, and they have no fear about their ability to meet the goals that they've set for themselves as far as sales and their production. So was that all of them, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I want to review one more time the funding, because there was financial statements in here said
correct, and when
said investment 30 or 40,000, and they were getting outside funding on the rest. Is that in place, or is it all savings, or?
Let's ask. Would you like to come up?
Excuse me, could you please come to the mic? This has been recorded, so we have to have you at the microphone.
The money is currently in our bank account right now. When we were originally writing that, there was a very different business structure than what we actually have right now. We were actually looking at purchasing the building right away, and we just couldn't do that. So the OFS and us came up with a 5-year lease with the option to purchase at 5 years.
I thought that pro forma might have been for a different building or project. Yes, so thank you. That's a yes.
Any other questions for her?
One.
Sure.
So, if we approve this, what's the possibility of Christmas cheer being available in other months other than just December?
It currently is. That is something, as soon as we took over, we keep our Cupid's Delight, Aphrodite's Desire. We released our Rita of the Vine, Cinco de Mayo wine. They're all available all year long.
Excellent. Thank you. My question's answered.
Go to your local Pinkies to pick that up. Any other questions for infrastructure? Again, for infrastructure, the 2 quotes are attached, their business plan and their resumes.
Any other questions? Make one comment. I thought it was interesting that they were involved with SBDC with regard to writing their business plan, I guess.
Yes.
That's just
That's what we're
icing.
looking for.
That's icing on the cake.
Yeah, no, these owners have been very invested in the process. We've been speaking with them for several months prior to them actually submitting their application. They wanted to really educate themselves on this process and make sure that they had everything together, all of their potential questions that you guys would have answered before we submitted. So we've been working with them since about February.
Well done. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, 2 motions and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Discuss proposed language amendments to Standard Economic Development Agreement. Natasha, are you gonna take that one, or?
We sent out some proposed language changes. I think it was to section 3.1. This morning or late last night, we received some additional edits from Melanie, which were really good. So we tried to get those sent out to the entire board. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them.
Yeah, and that would be a good question. Did you get the changes that Melanie suggested, and were you able to review those?
Yes, and partially.
I mean, you can, and I tell you what could happen, I think, Melanie, is very quickly and briefly, you could just do a synopsis of, here's what I was trying to accomplish with this language. I went through it in detail and didn't see anything other, because you had lots of comments, lots of footnotes. I read all the footnotes, and
I tried to give explanation
so just
of my changes, just so it would be more useful to everybody. I can run down them real quickly if y'all want. First of all, one of the things I tried to do was standardize some of the defined terms throughout the agreement. There are times where we were using the city or Odessa or the city of Odessa kind of interchangeably, and I didn't like that. So I tried to go through and standardize that starting early in the agreement by defining the city of Odessa as city, and it's referred to that way throughout the rest of the agreement. I also defined the term so that later references in the agreement go back to that defined term as well. We had started talking about jobs in our agreements in the terms of full-time equivalent jobs. I just furthered that standardization as well. It didn't make sense to me for us to, in some places, say job if that wasn't connected to that definition, because then the question is, what is a job? Is it different than an FTE? And these are just contract writing.
And you just took the
Thanks.
opportunity,
I did.
because we're revising it, just go ahead and do it now.
Some of these are just changes to terms of art that I liked better, and it's not any skin off my nose if y'all don't. When we say plus any pre-tax amounts that would be taken out, I changed that to properly withheld. I think that's more along the accountancy terms. Other than that, and eliminating references to jobs unless it was meant to be FTEs. I broke out in the investment piece because sometimes we talk about the full investment and sometimes we talk about partial investment. I tried to create those definitions so that they could be used later when we talk about prorations. I footnoted here to something.
It's number 6, and the only question I had is, this used to be that .6 on page 3. It used to be a requirement to maintain the FTEs throughout the term of the agreement. Right here. So I noticed you mentioned in the footnote to take it out.
Yeah,
So.
I asked about that. We don't use that anywhere else. FTE retention. Is that a concept we want to keep in the agreement? It's not used as a marker or benchmark for anything anywhere else in the agreement. So my instinct would be to take it out if it doesn't mean anything anymore.
And it was a requirement of the full-time equivalent jobs. It was listed as a requirement, so we'll be happy to take it out, but I just wanted to note that in the past it's always been used as a requirement.
Or we're not removing, in doing that, are we removing the fact that the grantee is required to maintain the jobs that's in the contract? Or
we don't ever say in here, there's not, what I'm saying is FTE retention is defined in this number 6, but there's nowhere else in the agreement where it's listed as a requirement that they retain. It's not in 2.2, it's not in, I mean, I don't know why we have that defined in here if it's not something we're using.
What would y'all think about instead of, because it gets kind of convoluted, it gets confusing. We're talking about retained jobs, talking about FTEs, we're talking about, because the whole thing is at the end of year 1, they have this many FTEs. At the end of year 2, they have this many FTEs. Whether that's a retained FTE, whether that's a new FTE, wouldn't it be simpler just to say at the end of year 1, you need to have 56 FTEs? I don't care if
That's
they're
what we
retained or new
have
or whatever.
currently.
So this serves no purpose in that case. If we're defining exactly what Chris is saying, then that really truly serves no purpose.
Right.
That was my question. If we're using now, if we're using this year 1 here where we have these numbers, these absolute numbers, there's nothing in here that says we have to have FTE retention. That it's just it's a definition without a use in the contract.
And if we just completely remove that and remove the retained stuff in there, that really cleans it up. It just says at the end of year 1, you have to have this many FTEs, whether they're retained or whether they're new.
Well, and I don't know that we need to take out the word retain everywhere. I mean, company agrees to retain X number of full-time equivalent jobs with annual payroll of Y. I think that's fine. And then they add, and then with payroll.
So you're just recommending to
remove this.
Eliminate a defined term that's not used anywhere in the document?
The definition. The definition needs to be removed because the term does not exist in the agreement.
I'm good with that. I don't have any issue.
I mean, we could define
Okay.
EBITDA in here, but we don't use
Yeah,
EBITDA
yeah.
in the agreement.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be
yeah,
useful.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, Melanie?
Let's see if there's anything else. I wanna make sure this second paragraph here on page 4, that's all in blue, that actually was Jan's language. It just wasn't in the Word version I had to redline from, so I made some minor tweaks to that, but that is her contribution. And it's what we've been talking about today, that if they had a shortfall, but then overperformed in a subsequent year, they can have a catch-up. So that is contemplated there.
You can put this wording in that other document.
Or
That's what
something
we have.
similar,
Something
yeah.
similar.
Yeah, so I guess on that particular point, if we approve this form, we could approve it subject to resolving that issue.
And they, each individual grantee may tweak some
Sure,
different,
sure.
they're not gonna be exactly
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same, but
yeah.
it gives us a good base to work from.
Okay,
Yeah, I really like the way you cleaned it up too, Melanie, about defining what the compensation was, any, W-2 compensation, and that made that way more clear.
Well, I think the W-2 compensation stuff was already in there.
yeah,
It was
I think
just
we'd already done
the
that.
withholding that I monkeyed with a little bit. And then, so footnote number 5, in a couple of places in the agreement, we have here on 4.2, under the insurance, we have a couple of references to the right to recapture unearned incentives. That really, recapture applied when back decades ago, when ODC paid grant funds up front.
Yeah.
That's not happened in the last, I don't know how many years. I would think close to 15. So I would take that out. There should not be any unearned incentives that are paid.
Let me ask you this, and this type of grant. What if we come in, let's say we had granted an incentive today. They came in, compliance committee said they've met everything, it's been audited, it looks good, and we've done that grant. But for whatever reason, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, come to find out maybe there was something fraudulent in that. They did not do that. Is there anything in this contract that gives us the ability to then go back and claw that back or recapture that in that essence?
I think that's very unlikely because they'd have to provide us with fraudulently filed 941s, fraudulently filed TWC. I mean, it would be a pretty massive case of fraud, and I just
Stranger things have happened.
Well, but.
well, I think that would be highly unlikely. However, we can put in here that if there is an incidence of fraud or some kind of massive misconduct on the part of a grantee, that we reserve the right
But if
to.
they did that, it's gonna be a violation of the contract anyway. I mean, you
But
can't,
is there
you
something
can't,
that says we can claw it back?
well,
We may not be able to give future grants.
well, but if someone violates contract, then if you take some kind of legal action, then you should have all the rights afforded to you to be able to recover.
We'd be able to sue them.
Yeah.
We'd be able to sue
I
them
think that's
for
where
the
that
fraud.
where that would happen, regardless of whether you had any language in there that says you could claw it back or not. I think you'd have the right to recover funds that were obtained fraudulently.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yes.
It would be, what it would be a business decision on how much money you wanted to spend going after something that you might not ever have any
Which
chance
would be
of
no
recovery.
different than trying to go through the action
Yeah.
to try to get the money back in accordance with the contract. So, I mean, it'd be the same thing, I think. I see it as not necessary.
So the next big change is section 4.4. I'm proposing that we remove that and it was originally my idea to include it. Y'all will remember when Summit filed for bankruptcy, there was a period of months that we were not able to release those funds from our set aside. That contract was part of the bankruptcy estate. You cannot take any action that's adverse to a company that's filed bankruptcy because of the automatic stay. I had hoped that if we include an automatic termination clause in our contract, that we wouldn't have to go through that period of months. And a lot of contracts do have that automatic termination clause in it. However, that type of clause is technically unenforceable, based on my research and based on the bankruptcy law. I reproduced a little bit here for y'all to look at if you wanted. We can include that clause. It really wouldn't be effective, and our attorneys, if that were to happen again, would be giving sound advice if they told us you cannot move those funds out of committed. You have to wait until you're discharged from the bankruptcy before you take that action. So, I mean, I don't see any reason to include it in here if it's not effective.
Is there any problem with leaving it?
The problem I would have with leaving it would be that a board could use it to make a bad decision that was illegal, that could lead to action taken against the entity by the bankruptcy court. I would not want to leave in something that gave the idea that you could take the action that would be in violation of the automatic stay.
And my thought was just keeping honest people honest. Not everybody's an attorney.
It's not a legal provision, so what's honest about it?
It's more of the average layperson reading that going, okay, if we do file bankruptcy or whatever, then they're just gonna pull their money back. If that's something they're looking at and it's in there, I mean, in your world, I can see they've probably got legal counsel can say, I think where the paper it's written on. But
I mean, I don't think it serves any purpose to include it. We already have them making the covenant that they're not in danger of filing bankruptcy. There's no proceedings currently pending or contemplated. So at the time they enter into the agreement, they're making the commitment that that's not on the horizon.
The other thing is, I'm sure that anybody's gonna sign these documents without having an attorney look over them anyway. So I don't know if it has, if you know attorney's not gonna, if it serves no purpose, get rid of it, I guess.
And I think that's really the last big thing. Again, we've got in here the recapture. If there's anything else that y'all want to discuss in it, let me know, or if, I know I got these to y'all late, I just worked on it when I was able to, so.
no, you did a great job. Thank you. I know you can tell you spent a lot of time on it. Thank you. I would like an opportunity to review it a little more and come back with some more questions before we vote on it. If we could table this one till next time, I'd appreciate it.
Does it,
Obviously, this
does
is
it
an
hold
important
up
document.
our development, approval of the development plan? Does not,
No.
does it? Okay.
I wouldn't think so.
I have a motion to table this till our next meeting.
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion?
I promise not to spend more time on it, and
And if anybody else on the board has any changes, just get them to us and we can incorporate those and send them out to the entire board before the next meeting.
Okay. All those in favor? Signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thanks, Mel, and everybody. Okay, let's see here, tabled. Review and discuss the general development plan. Who wants to tackle this? I figured it'd probably be Cindy going through that with it. But you don't have to. I mean, we could entertain questions. I have. Maybe I could get us started here. Let me pull this part up. General development plan. Okay, the one thing that I got to, the first thing I got to is on our strategic planning goals. I know there's some discussions that we are having, that I've advised the board about with regard to potentially some messaging effort. Came out of a trip that I made to Washington, D.C., where the legislators felt like that that the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin was not doing a thorough job of educating not only legislators but voters with regard to the clean energy things that are happening, and and eliminating a bunch of misinformation that's out there that's given the oil and gas industry a black eye. I would like to include in that something like implement and or collaborate on a messaging program intended to disseminate favorable factual information about the oil and gas industry in order to encourage legislators and voters. And if we could shortcut it to be implement and or collaborate on a messaging program for oil and gas. And the point being that we tried to get MDC, ODC, maybe the two chambers, and certainly PSP has already indicated that they would be in on that. So there's another funding option for that. But I would like to see that in our strategic planning goals, because I do think that's something that ODC ought to be involved in.
So how is this?
And we would use Permian Fuels America as our basis.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. I mean, we already got something out there that we own that would work.
That answers where I was going.
Forgot that part. That was important. So that's let's see, page 7. Oh, this I think is James still here? Oh, no. Well, my question would be this list on page 7 that has the highway projects. Is it the latest? I don't know who. So
Yes.
This is based on our all the latest information that we've put together as far as what we've agreed to do.
This is what was committed to at the time the funds were committed to TxDOT. Those were the projects that ODC committed money to.
Okay.
We have estimated timeframes that I've gotten from our traffic guy, Hal Feldman,
Mm-hmm.
as per his conversations with TxDOT. Are those included on that listing, projected times? If not, we can include those in there. They're not set in stone, it just depends on when TxDOT gets to those projects.
Okay, so
And James probably knows better, I can contact him.
well, I think we talked about this a few months ago, but I think I want to make sure that this listing is prioritized correctly and includes any items that maybe have surfaced within the last year or two. That maybe it's been determined by maybe Motran has done some evaluation, maybe the NPO has done something. Anyway, that some of those projects that maybe we didn't think were so important, now they need to be raised to the highest priority, that we're not missing the opportunity to do that and recognize that. So I guess I would want to maybe have, and I think the best authority on it would be be Motran and James to look at this, I think, to just determine, hey, is there anything that we really ought to be adding to this?
We can,
Even if it required appropriation of additional funds, because we could make that decision.
So I think that certainly is, something we should do. But if I remember, at some point, 12 months, within the last 12 months, we've asked him to do that. I mean, that
Mhm.
request you're talking about is a request that we've asked of him before,
Okay.
so.
And is this all that we've expended? I mean, we've not expended more than that of the 11.5?
Yeah, these projects take forever.
Sure.
Okay, on page 8, and if I'm skipping past something, just jump in there. Let's see.
Are you on page 8 of 22?
Page 8 of the, page 8 of
Infrastructure.
22,
Cost
correct.
infrastructure.
And it says something in here, this housing
Yes,
issue.
yes.
I would recommend we delete this whole section and then just come back, because we're gonna reevaluate it. I think we ought to, not encumber the funds. And then if we find a workforce housing program that we can all agree to that's gonna be effective, then we ought to do it.
I agree.
So,
It's unfortunate this hadn't been effective, but it hasn't.
she doesn't agree with
Cindy
it?
has a question.
We still have an agreement for one that has not collected on.
Yeah.
It's the little condo, I don't know what you call them,
The
at the
jar
corner
one?
of 7th and Goldard.
Yes.
They have not submitted anything yet. I think they're mostly done. They have a for lease signed up. But there was actually an agreement signed that upon occupancy, that they could, claim their infrastructure, and we haven't gotten anything on that yet. So I would say, and there's an amount attached to that, I believe.
Yeah,
What do you think?
61,248.
And so I think we can set that amount still aside,
Mhm.
and then,
Agreed.
but it would take a vote of the board to release that assignment of everything else.
So
Okay.
I like that, but to add to that, what about this other one? Cause the approved funding on it was 70,000 and some change, and they've only, expended 63 and some change, so will we have to do the same thing for that?
I don't believe they did one of the houses is what I'm thinking, but I can check into that too.
But I agree with David, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think we need to certainly release these funds and.
We can include this on the next agenda.
Okay. All right, and then, I'm on page 198 of the entire package. Now, which would be, I guess, let's see, page 109 of the, Black Chamber of Commerce's, contract. It says, it's talking about the primary purpose of the contractor is to foster the development and growth of black-owned and small minority businesses, to encourage convention and tourism, especially in the black community. Well, I don't think we're asking the Black Chamber of Commerce to encourage convention and tourism, because that doesn't fit under our charge. I mean, it's not an economic development issue.
No, I appreciate that, 'cause that was a question I had about it. Where did this come from? Is this line item coming out of the chambers, Black Chambers mission statement, or where's this coming from?
That was the proposal from last year. And that's because ours was under the merchant, marketing. And
That's
we,
Yeah, we took the 50.
Oh, because
the
we did
money's
the
coming
marketing.
out of our marketing funds.
Well, I mean, our marketing funds, I mean,
That
can't our marketing funds foster the development and growth of black-owned and small minority businesses? I mean, that's what we want it to do.
business in general.
Yes, really, the statement after the semicolon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would propose to delete that language unless there's some other reason somebody knows that we shouldn't have it in, that we should have it in.
So I'm a little lost where you are.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm on
It's
page,
right there. It's
one
in
of nine, page 109 of the Black Chambers
Know where,
agreement that's included in the
The
general
red line.
plan?
Okay.
the first part, the first clause is fine. The encouraging convention and tourism, especially in the Black community, we're not sure where that revision comes from
Okay.
or if it's necessary.
Okay. I'll find it.
The language, like Mr. Walker has said, it came from their proposal. When they submit the proposal, that language becomes a part of their contract.
Okay, yeah,
So whatever the new proposal that they submit this year will be put in there.
yeah. Okay, so I would recommend we eliminate that, because that's not something that we're gonna request from them,
Okay.
in my opinion, unless somebody disagrees.
No,
I need
I
to-
totally agree. Because I'm not sure where it meets, especially in the
We'll
back.
find it.
Yeah,
Could I back up one place?
sure.
When we were
Why would you put that?
up in, page 13 on the first part on, downtown, and with the property tightening up down there and people are for profit and a lot of the possibilities of facade grants are gone, you might consider scooting tier 1 out a little bit over into tier 2 and giving them a little bit more money, or 3 or 4, or changing the boundaries a little bit, since it's beginning to be a tight property proposition downtown. Either people are holding for profit or they've already done facades. So if we want to continue to make Odessa better, we might have to spread it out a little bit further, or the money spread, the percentage spread a little further.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find that.
And I haven't looked at a map, I just saw that, so.
Okay. I mean, do you have a recommendation to what to change it to?
No, I haven't,
Maybe we should ask Casey to give us,
Say have to be done. in
Casey's
conjunction
already
with the downtown
left
Okay.
the building.
yeah,
Okay.
because she made that comment that there are not very many properties left
Yeah.
in tier 1.
Okay,
It's still our goal to make Odessa look better, just spread it a little bit
Just
more.
maybe
Yeah.
make more
yeah.
funds available to a larger number of
Cindy, on our
properties.
calendar, do we have to approve this today, this general form, this, development plan?
No, you don't. It's just review and discuss.
Okay, perfect.
It's for approval at the next.
Okay, so, I guess, someone facilitate that with, Casey?
We will.
May I add something?
Mhm.
This is actually from the downtown program in the ordinance, so the change would need to be made to the city ordinance, on these two programs, the downtown infrastructure and facade. We similarly made these changes a couple months ago.
Yeah, we made some changes,
Yes.
but we didn't address the tiers.
No, so if we
Yeah.
were to make that change first, we would have to make it through that program, and then that converts into here.
I understand, but
Paperwork.
it may need doing, so.
Well, if we end up at cross purposes, we could amend the general development plan if we needed to, so.
No, what she's saying is if we,
Well, I mean, if that happens first,
yeah,
I mean, or
Yes.
last, or whatever,
Yes.
I guess. So, we can figure out how to make it, make it work. Somebody smarter than me can. Let's see, I had on the Odessa Chambers contract, it has there's a reference in there, benchmarks in Exhibit B, but there's no Exhibit B, and I was just curious as to what those benchmark, that exhibit was gonna look like. I'm all in favor of benchmarks. I like but it references,
Again, this is a carry forward from last year's contract.
okay,
So there was an exhibit B in last year's contract. If they provided another one in this proposal, it would be in this contract as well.
okay, Tom, you might wanna note that that's something that I think we ought to clearly understand, how our benchmark, and I know you've been doing some work that's kind of in parallel with this, so, how can we look at benchmarks, how are we gonna match up with other communities and whatnot, so. Cause it said, contractor shall also report the benchmark information referenced in Exhibit B. So I guess the contract with Motran, it's talking about the La Entrada, and that, I mean, that seems to be new language, but it's because it's in here in red.
It is in red to point out, what each of the contractors proposed to provide for the ODC for economic development. So this is, again, it's language from last year. I just have it in red so it would stand out for you. Again, so you would see if there was something that.
You know, one of the things that I would do here, I think, is let's make sure that we get this language for James to look clearly at. I think he has a really good handle on, and he and his board have a really good handle on what are they trying to accomplish from an economic development perspective for the Permian Basin. And that's really what ought to be in here. I think the essence of their mission statement or whatever. So I would note that and make sure that he matches up with he likes the way that this language reads in order to be able to accomplish what we're asking to accomplish.
We can do that with each contractor.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea across the board.
Yeah, okay, great. And then there's a typo, I think, on the marketing piece. And I'm showing it's on page 240, whatever that is. There's some language that was added in there.
This is in the advertising and marketing. Piece.
And there's an extra word in there.
Where is it?
Well, I can't find what page I'm on.
4 of 9 of the
Here, I'm getting there
marketing.
now. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Okay, 3.2.1, activity reporting. It says contractor shall provide monthly activity report in writing to ODC, and then there's a mark out, a red line mark out. In writing to ODC to confirm that the, let's see, public service purpose which is being accomplished. I guess this is right. Maybe I read it wrong. Contractor shall provide monthly activity report in writing to ODC to confirm. No, it's correct. Never mind. I read it wrong. Marketing RFP. I did send something on this one. We're talking. Oh, that's on the RFP. We're not there yet. Never mind. Those are the only things that I found in there that I really thought needed some attention. Anybody have anything else on the general development plan?
No, but I hadn't made it all the way through it, so.
It's good late night reading.
Not for long.
So does the staff have anything with regard to any questions and kind of burning issues with regard to that we would need to address so that you kind of know what to revise to?
No, what we'll do is we'll send those out to all of the contractors and ask them to update the language.
Okay.
Or make any changes, and then we can send that out to the board also.
Okay.
Hopefully before the next meeting, depending upon when they get those changes to us.
Yeah. We sure don't want to hold anything up because I know our calendar's kind of tight. But anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, so review and discuss proposed agreement form for annual contractors.
We actually just did that. It's
Yeah.
all combined.
Yeah, I think we did. I didn't have any other notes on that either. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? And then review and discuss requests for proposals. Cindy?
I think everyone should have received the 2 RFPs or requests for proposals, one for the advertising marketing services, and the other one for compliance services that's currently being done by Weaver. Marketing's being done by CVA. Mr. Boutan sent me some changes he wanted to include with the expectation of the SEO, something that lets consultant know that we not only want to measure effectiveness, but we also want to maximize effectiveness, and some expectation of an end of the year report that evaluates overall effectiveness of the marketing strategy. I mean, we get monthly reports for them, but they may not give you an annual picture that you're probably looking for.
Yeah,
So-
and maybe that's something that we ought to discuss very quickly. I think, with all the discussions that we've had with regard to the marketing program and even how we got here with regard to requests for proposals, I think there ought to be some kind of an annual review of the effectiveness of our marketing program, prompted by the consultant that pulls together data for us to look at that says, and I remember that there's been some concern with regard to the, I guess, lack of I don't forget what you call it, hits, involvement, whatever, on our website, on the social media component. So I think we ought to have something that we require our marketing consultant to come in and say, all right, here's what our strategy was, here's what we did, and here's the effectiveness of it with data. And I mean, have any issues with any of that, or I think
I don't have any issues, but just let our advertising, who's on advertising to get that report back. But now we're in an RFP with them. Yeah. So this will be in the whoever we select. I mean, it could be CVA, it could be any of the other ones that are on the list. But we're going to require them to do some kind of a report at the end of the year that says, we did well or we didn't, or we did well in some areas and we didn't do well in some areas, so that we can adjust our program, our strategy, or whatever.
Yeah, and then that could be a key point. I mean, one of the things I wanted to specifically ask is, we took it upon ourselves to put in a 5-year initial term with additional 1-year contract, the right to extend 1 year. I think once you pick a marketing and advertising group, and they, it's going to take some time for them to, build up what their program is. You don't want to turn around and change in 2 years or 3 years. Maybe a 5-year is more of a basis for how effective their marketing strategy really was. Is that 5 years too long? Is it comparable?
I think in today's time, it's too long.
You think it's too long?
Computing moves in light years, so fast in methods and processes.
Well, I think they would have the opportunity annually when they're turning in a budget. Maybe it's a requirement that they turn in a budget annually. Right now CVA has to turn in annually, and we contract with them annually, so it's not but they've been ongoing as well. So I don't know how much you're going to get people in on a really short-term basis. So what do you think, in 3 years, 4 years? I mean,
So are you talking about? I'm maybe a little confused. So are you saying our agreement? Are you talking about specifically the agreement itself?
no, I think as a provider of marketing and advertising for ODC. I mean, do you want to go through an RFP process every year? Do you want them to have some?
I don't think that's what we're asking.
No.
I don't think that's the case.
No, but I don't think we need to sign a contract with somebody for 3 or 5 years either.
Well, no, I mean, I think the intent would be, so maybe we change this from, it would be a 1 year with the intent to continue on for what period of time?
And I had a question.
On a year basis, right?
Yeah, all of our contracts, they should be 1-year contracts.
All the contracts are 1 year.
They should be 1-year contracts. Again, we have the option, and they have the option every year to continue or not. but, you know, I see what you're saying is, you know, and I think we're all smart enough up here that we're not gonna hold the company's feet to the fire. You know, it takes time for a marketing plan to develop.
Right, absolutely.
But here's the deal, they're gonna have to give us a marketing plan.
Right.
You know, them to say, okay, you know, you put in their budget's 400 to 600,000. Yeah, we're gonna hit right now. Here's a $500,000 budget. Great. What are you gonna do with it? Well, we'll talk about that here. I mean, they're gonna have to give us a plan.
Yeah, and I think in the first part of the
it talks
request,
about
we were saying, you know, they had a couple of months, they had 2 months to a strategy outline and framework within 2 months of contract authorization. So we were doing some of that to allow them some time to get something developed and given to you.
I think Chris is, I really do think Chris is hitting on here, is that I think what's being asked is develop a plan and then come back at the end of the year and just talk about how effective that plan was and what would be strategies going into the next plan. I think that's really all that we're asking for. I don't think it's.
Yeah,
I
I see where Cindy's coming from too. She's trying to give them guidelines and structure of what, you know, can they count on a 2-year, 3-year, you know, commitment?
Yeah, I mean,
from us?
most
And-
firms are
Well,
gonna
see,
be.
And I think that's why I was confused. I didn't realize that are we legally only allowed to do annual contracts? Or is that something that we've chose to do?
No, I think you can do multi-year contracts. We still have the wording in most of our contracts that are multi-year that says it's dependent on annual funding because we are a governmental entity, okay? Just like we do with audit contract. You do an RFP, it's not very cost effective for a firm to say, yeah, I'll come in and do it for 1 year for whatever price, because you generally have a learning curve at any time. So they want to see that they're not just going to be a 1-year shot. So I would think marketing would go along those lines to some extent, not as much, but if they're going to spend months developing a plan, I think they're going to want to know that they're not just doing for a 1-year deal.
Yeah, but at the same time, if their 1-year plan, pardon the French, ends up being crap, I don't want to be tied into a 3-year plan for crap.
Well, I think it also.
So, you know, so I think our contract should still be 1 year, but I wouldn't mind seeing a bid, and I'd like to give them a little more freedom in bidding this thing out. You know, you know, you put a price tag in there of $400,000 to $600,000.
Yeah.
You know, I think you need to drop that bottom number completely off.
Take the bottom off of
Yeah,
it.
having a top range, maybe, but we've had higher numbers than that in the past for a good plan. But some companies may want to come in and say, okay, you know, on a 1-year contract, we may do it for this. For a 2-year contract, maybe we give you a little better deal per year. For a 3-year contract, maybe it gets a little better, but give them that flexibility to do that. But at the same time, we don't need to tie ourselves to a 3-year commitment to anybody that we have no idea how they're going to do. I mean, we know how CVA is, but aside from that.
Well, even in a 3-year contract, you always have, there theoretically be some provisions.
Well,
for
I think the contract itself would have a exit clause on behalf of ODC, that if you're not performing to a level that's acceptable, then we have the option to terminate the contract.
So then why does 3 years become even relevant?
Say that again, Chris?
Then why does 3 years or 5 years become relevant anyway?
think
If they're not performing, we've got them out. Why even put it in there?
Well, I think it gives the contractor more incentive
I do too.
to make a commitment, would have more interest in the deal as opposed to a 1 year.
I mean,
Yeah, multi-year, but you don't want to saddle a slow horse. I mean, you want, if the market changes in advertising, it changes quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You want to change horses or your company ability to change their pattern. You just want benchmarks as you were speaking at, or you want test points to make sure they're acquiring what our money is paying them to do. And I don't know how to measure that. It would take somebody, an expert in the industry, to give you those points. I don't know if anybody here can do it, but there's certainly people out there with a few phone calls could tell you what to look for on count and saturation and if you're reaching your targeted goal. I mean, like Odessa doesn't even print a newspaper anymore. I mean, 2 days a week. I mean, things change, and it's that way all over the country, and so we need to be ready to stay with somebody that can change, and if the incentive is, you don't wanna be bound to somebody for 5 years, I don't think that's, not changed.
I don't think, I would suggest 5 years. I mean, I'm thinking max 3. And I think that max 3 gives us an opportunity to get some of the best players that there are out there. I think when you talk about on a year-to-year basis, and we changed, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what will come back in that RFP with just a 1 year.
If we've got some caveats in it for us to get out, I would be okay with that.
No, I would certainly have caveats to get out. That ain't what I'm saying. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. Because I do think that from a marketing standpoint, it's going to take some time to figure out. It's going to take some time for us to figure out what the heck it is that we want to do, and then for them to get acclimated to that, and then to put that plan in place, and then before you know it, you know, it's 12 months. They're going to spend 6 months just trying to put the plan together. Quite honestly,
I think we'd get more interest if we had say a 3-year, and certainly have the appropriate language in there that allows us to terminate. Well, I don't know. I don't mind a 3-year agreement. I mean, again, as long as we do our work with regard to evaluating and holding the consultant to the obligations in the agreement, and if they don't meet the obligations in the agreement, then we terminate and we go somewhere else. But I think we'll get more qualified proposals if we do like a 3-year or even a 2-year. But I think a 3-year would be a good one. And
we
then
have to do a good job of really enumerating what their obligations are.
Absolutely, I agree.
To give us that, because I just don't want to say, okay, they're like, great, we're leaving, but we're taking the next 2 years of payments with us as we're walking out the door, so you can go to a different.
Well, and here's the other thing. I think that this is where the marketing committee is going to have to be a little bit more effective in its meetings.
Yep.
And making sure that they're giving accurate guidance. And
I agree.
If the marketing committee does its job as it should, then that should help alleviate some of that.
Yep.
And so what about range? Do y'all want to leave it open up to a certain amount? Do y'all want to give a range? I mean, I don't want them to think that this is a $20,000 a year deal that we want. So I don't know. I mean, if you give it open to 600,000,
what have we averaged in the last 3 years? I apologize for cutting you off.
Well, I can tell you that the year that we did the Permian Fuels America, we spent more when we had the business enterprise, the business challenge thing. We spent more in that year. I think we adjusted this last year's budget down to $615,000 based on taking some of the things that were being paid out of CVA's budget and moving them to the chamber budget.
Mm-hmm.
Those things that were membership type things, even though it was marketing, but it was a membership type thing. So it was at 615,000, and that's kind of where I got 600 as the total.
Well, is there a way for us to tell them what we've spent in the last 3 or 4 years, but don't put it in the RFP? Is there a way to?
Well, I mean, if they call and ask, we can answer.
Yeah,
that
but
question.
is there a proactive way to do that other than put it in the RFP?
We could put in here what we've spent for the last 3 or 4 years, if that's what you want to do. But I don't.
So 600, 500, whatever it may be, it doesn't necessarily say that's what we're going to do.
Right.
That just gives them a ballpark of what we in general what we've done. If you,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just don't think I'd want to exclude anybody because they think they don't fit. They think they don't fit in that bigger market, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and there's people plenty capable that in a lower price range, but they may exclude themselves from offering anything because they're confidential. They think that you have to have a magnitude of platform and backing and people operating behind you, when a lot of these smaller companies that are independent do outstanding job when it's a 2 or 3 or 4 man group without 20 people deep. And I don't want people to think that they just don't have a big platform to bid it and it's too big a job. a lot of companies contractors won't bid city jobs. They don't think they can insure for enough to handle a job they bid. They think dealing with government, it takes a lot more money, but I don't want to.
I think that's a good point.
Dispel the belief that they can
So you
come
said-
in.
You're saying putting in some dollar figure in
Don't need to.
600, it would scare or deter someone.
I could leave it open. I mean, they know they're dealing with the municipality.
I don't think it's necessary.
You don't think what's?
I think Larry's point is.
So don't put an amount in at all?
No, I don't think it.
I think we're gonna get a lot of phone calls then about, what,
Okay.
how.
Well, if they ask us, I mean, it's public information what we've spent. You can tell them what we
No, I
spent.
think
So
they're
I can
gonna,
tell you, every marketing company I've ever dealt with, they will know what is your annual budget spent. Just the way they bring things. I don't know right.
well, I
wrong,
mean, I
indifferent.
think that,
And
I think
I've
that
used-
determines
used-
what they're gonna propose to you is what they
I've used
can
small
do.
and I've used extreme big, and every last one of them, they won't know what you. I can go either route, but
And I think we want this to be somebody that can hit nationally across the United States, absolutely, but, and I don't know if Tom, I mean, he's got a lot of experience. Obviously, whoever is our marketing and advertising is gonna have to work hand in hand with our ED person, so,
It's true.
Oh, we're gonna have to increase the budget then.
I'm just trying to, this was not easy to write, and I'm not a marketing person, so.
I don't think we need a range on it either. I think they may call and ask, what's the budget been in the past? We can tell them that it's public information.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the questions are gonna be, how much do you want out there? How often do you want to be? How many posts do you want? How many,
Well, see,
it's gonna get into a lot of that stuff that
Well, see,
I'm not gonna be able to
and
answer.
I don't think you do.
I don't think you have to.
I
That's not what
think
we're
that-
looking for.
Go ahead, Chris, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we want them
Exactly.
to tell us.
Yeah, that's part of the plan.
That's the
Devise a
whole
plan.
point of the marketing company.
Exactly.
We're not marketing experts. So, and that kind of goes to one of the things I was going to ask you next time. I mean, I looked at our list. These are all Odessa Midland companies. That's well, good, and great, and wonderful. But how many of those did you find are experts in economic development marketing and have prior experience in economic development marketing?
That's true, but, I was staying under the philosophy of it's local dollars, do we wanna spend them
I thought we
locally?
tackled that last meeting, though.
No, it seemed like we did say local though.
Well, I had a mixture of some saying just Odessa, some saying Odessa
Yeah.
Midland, and I had some saying,
Here's the thought.
Whatever.
Again, our contracts we do, we want our guys that do the grants to use every option they can to use local labor. Are they required to? No. We want to do the same thing. We want to use every effort we can to use local advertising and marketing companies. But it's still our job to safeguard economic development assets and get the best value out of every economic dollar we spend. Therefore, I see nothing wrong with getting a presentation and ideas from companies outside of this area. Whether or not we go with that is up to us.
Listen, I'm not gonna disagree with you, as long as it doesn't show up in no little article where we,
Well, you're not.
where we use tax money appropriately, as long as y'all just keep me out y'all articles, well, I'm good with that. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Like for example, I just did a quick Google search and there's a company out there called Golden Shovel. They're actually out of like Missouri. But they do the economic development marketing for Grapevine. They do it for Tulsa. They do it for brain fart, Central Texas.
I've never been there.
So,
Anyway, but they specialize in marketing for economic development.
Tom, you have some out there that we could certainly have, I mean, as long as everybody's good with going outside the market. I think it makes a lot of sense.
In a market where you don't have a lot of local advertisers, it's not a bad idea to go out and look. And it's funny you mentioned Golden Shovel. I've actually used them before. It's Minnesota, not Missouri.
Thank you.
But when I was in Powell State, we really didn't have anybody capable, so we were forced to look outside the market. You do have some local capabilities here, but it's a board decision. But that's up to y'all. But I'd say you could at least take a look and then decide if something blew your way.
I think we have a dozen or close to a dozen Midland and Odessa firms here. I mean, if that's not giving those local firms an opportunity, then somebody's missing the boat here. And if we want to add some other firms who specialize in economic development, and I would enlist Tom's help with hunting those down, I don't have any problems with it at all.
In the end, we've still got to see their presentations, and
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
all make a decision.
Sure.
So.
Yes, Tom.
One
Not
way
my
you
meeting,
can put this
sorry.
in the RFQ
Some of us have good mouth.
is priority will be
Excuse me,
given
could
to
you please
local-
come up to the podium?
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I'll cover myself.
Hit him with rulers.
I'm gonna move over.
Good idea.
David has been restricting water or restricting liquids for like 6 hours in preparation of this meeting, 'cause this is getting cruel.
What you could do is in your RFQ state that priority will be given to local marketing firms, you know, within 50 miles of Odessa or whatever, but that firms outside of the market with extensive economic development experience will be considered.
Well, I would just add them to the list, because, you know, how much consideration are you gonna give them? And if somebody that didn't get the awarded the contract, you know, are they gonna come back and say, well, how much consideration did you give me? You know, cause I'm local, and are they fudging that into their numbers? Just make it simple, just
Yeah.
add just find, you know, whatever you think would be reasonable with regard to having a firm that will come in and, you know, has access obviously to our community and whatnot, that has specific experience in economic development. Just add them to the list. That's what I do. Don't make it any
Because in
more
reality,
complicated.
with our budget, did we decide not to put the budget number down?
Yeah, we don't have to
I don't
do
think
that.
someone from Minnesota's gonna come to Odessa, Texas and try to, for a budget of $500,000.
They came to Palestine for a lot.
I think you'll be surprised.
But they might.
I think you'll be surprised. Does it specialize in it and already have a template for it and can do it?
Do
Are
you,
you gonna require them to attend physically monthly?
Yep, same thing as we've had in the past.
well, we could make that,
All kinds of.
we
today's
could,
technology,
we could make that
We can
decision.
vote 'em in.
I mean, based on, you know, whatever they propose. I mean, somebody proposes, you know, well, I can be there as often as you want, but I gotta be there on Zoom. Maybe that's okay, depending on what they propose. So I just kinda leave it open.
Thanks, Tom. You were lots of help, Tom.
Do you need this as an action item, or you're just trying to get guidance?
Well, I mean, this is June 14th,
Yeah, yeah.
so when do you want answers
I mean, do
back?
you have, my question is, do you have enough information to go forward, Cindy?
I can make some changes based on what I've heard today. Would the advertising committee like to approve the final? I think our advertising committee is who? I don't have it.
Chris Cole and I and Kurt.
Yeah, you are.
No.
Yeah, you don't work.
I am,
no, I am, but I haven't met
Yeah.
yet. We haven't met yet.
The board is gonna approve this list.
Well, we're gonna start with the marketing committee, cause she's gotta have some answers.
Can you approve the RFP?
Yeah, you are on it, Chris, yeah.
What are you asking me to put my name on? Let me ask that.
I just want somebody to approve the changes I make to the RFP so we can send it out. I mean, it's gonna
But
take,
the board is
we
ultimately
have to
gonna-
advertise
The board is ultimately gonna make a decision.
Yes.
Okay. yeah,
on
okay,
who
I'm good.
you
Yes.
pick, yes.
Yes.
But on the RFP.
Yes.
Okay.
Just don't blame you though.
No.
Thank
I'm
you.
telling you, y'all don't put me in y'all articles.
Don't put that down, don't write that down.
Where's Kim Smith when we need her?
Well, you know, what you send out could influence what you get back, so,
I do agree that's gonna be the case.
All right,
Okay, I will send my changes to the advertising committee and ask them to respond back to me with
excellent,
anything that's not what we intended.
okay.
Okay, the other one is the compliance consulting services. Do y'all have any changes to that, questions, anything?
What is that again? I'm sorry.
That's
The compliance consulting
Weaver.
agreement.
Oh, yeah.
that Weaver's
RFP.
doing now.
No.
I mean, it's not as critical, I don't think, because we extended Weavers through September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. Have y'all had a chance to review it? Is there anything that's of concern?
I haven't even adjusted.
There's one typo in there, I think is what I told you. It's in that.
It's
list.
on the list,
No, I
yes.
like it.
We will get the name right on the list.
It's Campbell.
I did look at it and I think it's fine.
Okay. So I'm good to go forward with that one?
Yes,
I think so.
Okay,
good job.
I'm done
Thank you.
for today.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Cindy.
Partnership is got a meeting scheduled, I think in the next 30 days or so to meet again. We're gonna meet quarterly. Tax incentive meets once a year. Compliance, hadn't anything from compliance committee, I guess, lately. Advertising committee, y'all are
Well, now-
gonna-
now we
y'all
know
are
what
gonna-
to do.
You're gonna meet now.
We'll get back with
And grants review, you can see things have been happening there for sure. Any additional information, Larry, with regard, or Melanie, with regard to the downtown committee?
No, we pretty much discussed, Melanie and I went, and ever time we go, we haven't seen the real downtown committee there. We're there as principals, not as principals, but as observers, but so, they've certainly did a good job, and every time there's a new one, they find stuff that, for clarification, and they've done an excellent job of getting it clarified, and so I think everything's going good.
I think Casey's done a good job of implementing the changes to the the application that we requested. And the grant that y'all saw come through here today is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, great. All right, go ahead.
Do you have our checks? Yes, ma'am.
He's in overtime.
This is a volunteer. I hate to tell you that, Chris.
Yeah, we're gonna double your salary for next month.
All right, next item on the agenda, citizen comments for non-agenda items. Are there any citizens? Hearing none, then we are adjourned.
I make that motion.
Not necessary.
Gotta go.